Hi guys, I'm going to explain you what you're going to do today. Remember, in my site you have the explanation about what the mesh tool is and the introductory video for that, okay? But today what I'll be explaining you is just a little bit how can you create a better gradient exactly using that, the mesh tool. I picked this apple. As you can see, it shows all the details. They're very clear, so it's best for you to download an HD photo. And remember to challenge yourself, okay? This apple that I have here has all these details, so I'm really looking forward to see what you come up with, okay? So I'm going to get started. I will create a new layer first. I'll show you my layers later. And what I'm basically going to start to do is to create a shape around my apple, okay? So I'm very simple. I'm just going to start creating it. Of course, you're going to take your time to do this a little bit more perfect. For the video, I'm just going to do it really fast. Okay, now that I have the shape in here, you can edit the path and all that. What I'm going to do is to remove the fill, but not from the properties panel. I'm just going to hide what's in here in my apple. For that, I'm going to press Command and click in the eye. So as you can see, I've hidden the colors of the layer, but I can still see the path. Okay, what you can see here is the thumbnails of my layers a little bit bigger. You need to have this bigger because in here is like it will be the preview of your work. To make them bigger, you click in this 3-line menu, and then you're going to go to panel options. And in here it says the row size, small, medium, large, other. I have it at 80 pixels, but you can make it even bigger, okay? So once you have that, we are going to start adding the mesh tool, okay? So for that, I'm going to click in here. And as you can see, I have, when I click in one of the anchor points, that little small grid appears with the plus sign. So that means when I click in there, one line that will go from one point to another, from one anchor point to another, okay, will cross through the mesh tool. So I'm going to click here one more time. How do you know where to put them? Pretend this is exactly like that, a mesh, una malla, okay? So if you have a mesh and you use it to wrap an apple or another 3D object, how will the mesh move, or how will the mesh place around that apple? Of course, it's not going to be like perfect squares. Some of them will expand more than others, okay? So for that, I'm just going to add a couple of lines here through my mesh tool, and I'm going to click there because that you also need to have some vertical guides, okay? So once you finish all this, you're going to take your time. For example, the squares in here will be bigger than the others because that's the 3D effect. With the direct selection tool, you can move the anchor points of your mesh tool, okay? Now, after you placing all of this, you don't need to have a lot. You just need to identify where the color changes, and that's where you want to add your anchor points. For example, I have this white part over here of the light of my apple, and I do need to have some anchor points in there, but it changes in this part. So my next anchor points will be there. So your anchor points again should be where you have a change in the color, okay? You can use the handles also to move your mesh tool around this. So it's perfect, okay? So these will require some time. Okay, for example, in this part, I will need a couple more of horizontal lines in my mesh tool. Why? Because I have this big color change. Now, once you have all your mesh tool, this is what you will do. Remember, with letter A, you active the direct selection tool. And the other tool that we'll be using is the eyedropper, which you can active with the letter I. Okay, so if I press A, I will active the direct selection tool. If I press I active the eyedropper. The next thing is to sample the colors. Okay, for that, I'm going to have my layers open. I'm going to active my direct selection tool, click on one of the anchor points. I want you to see what happens here. And then I'm going to press I and click to sample one of the colors. So as you can see, this entire part that surrounds that anchor point now was colored. Okay, so I'm going to press A again, click on the next anchor point, press I again, and click in here to sample another color. I'm going to go here, A, click, I, and sample the next color. So what you're going to do next is to complete your entire apple. If you think that some of the colors are not very accurate, then maybe it's because you need another line through your mesh tool, okay? I'm going to completely hide that layer because I want to show you what I already have in here. I'm going to appear it. So that's the result of my apple. Okay, we have all those little details that you can use, that you can put using the brush tool, for example. You can decrease the opacity. Those small details will make the difference. What happens when you want to do the leaf? And you also have the stick of the apple. In here, you don't need an entire mesh tool for this. What you can do is just to create the shape and use the freeform gradient to add points of color in here. If you want to plan to use, if you're planning to use the mesh tool for the leaf, do not create the entire shape of the leaf. Why? Because you also have this line over here and you will want to give this a different effect. For example, I have here the first part of my leaf because I want to add a stroke to this leaf so it resembles a little bit this pointy ends. And in another layer, what I would have to do is to create another shape of this. Now, it might get tricky when you add gradients to like a narrow shape like this. So for this, I would recommend not to use the mesh tool, but to use the freeform gradient, okay? So your work for today will have to practice this. You can do a mango, you can do a peach. I left you some examples that the graphic design 2 students did. So you're going to take your time and create your own fruit.